I hope you have a great Earth Day as we celebrate this, the 50th anniversary. First, I'm not very good at giving this kind of recorded talk, so give me a little leeway here. But what I thought I would try to do is try to look back at some of the important people in the environmental movement. And I want to try to look at their view of the world and our perspective and our view of the world. And we'll see how this goes. So, what do you see here? Pretty easy, huh? Okay. What do you see here? Oh, Bromer, come on. This is just too easy. What is it? How are the two pictures different? What do you think? Well, let me tell you, when I take a look at this, I see something a little bit different. This is what I saw. I saw a dead tree. I saw shrubs. I saw ferns. I saw acacia trees. I saw shrubs. I saw grass. You what? What's that? I missed something? What did I miss? I don't get it. That's what I saw. Oh, those, the animals that rely on the plants. Okay, so if you said you saw eagles or elephants, then a botanist, sort of like myself, might say that you have plant blindness. What you did is you saw the organisms that were most similar to you and missed all of the plants. Okay, my point here is that what we see and don't see oftentimes depends on our view. And I get a daily meditation from Brother Richard Rohr. And this was a quote I found recently. He says, shouldn't that tell us something really important about perspective? Every viewpoint is a view from a point. We must be able to critique our own perspective if we are to see a fuller truth. Well, what he was talking about Jesus in the gospel and how the people that followed Jesus and that Jesus really worked with were the lepers, the sinners, and those types of people, whereas the people that put him to death were the people that were in power. And so that's what he's talking about, probably the perspective. But this struck me that this really applies to the way we see everything. And if as a botanist I see the plants here, then what is my view? Well, as a young kid, growing up as a teenager in the 1960s and 1970s, I can tell you I wasn't very happy with people. I looked around and looked at the news, and we saw this type of air pollution. The Cuyahoga River was catching fire. There was a lot of things that weren't very good. And who was causing the problem? It was the people. But that all changed with the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Environmental Protection Act, just to name a few. These types of things became very important and were probably the result of this groundswell for this very first Earth Day in 1970. There are a number of other people that have also influenced my view, and I want to highlight three of those today and to talk about those and how they've influenced my view and how it's changed from the 1970s. Well, here we see Aldo Leopold. Aldo, of course, wrote the book Sand County Almanac. And one of the most important parts of this book was called his land ethic. And his land ethic really grew out of his lifetime of experiences as a hunter, a forester, land manager, and a teacher. And he knew that we needed to feel and love the land before we would really protect it. And that's why, as you can see in the quote there, that we need to be able to see this land as something that we respect. Interestingly enough, he had real difficulty getting the Sand County Almanac published, and it was not actually published until a year after his death. My next environmental hero is actually from Kenya. Giri Mahaf. She was given a chance to study biology in the United States, and she got a special scholarship and came from Kenya and came to the United States, got a bachelor's of science and a master's of science in biology, and she returned to Kenya, where she actually became very active in the environmental movement and was involved in protecting a number of parks. She actually put herself in the way of bulldozers to prevent skyscrapers. After she gained sort of a following, she developed what was called the Green Belt movement, which was used to educate women and to plant trees. And as you can see from her quote there, that planting these trees, which you might think as what difference is that going to make in that little thing, you can tell that this is something that was really important to her. And just so you know, Wangari here was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004. My next environmental hero is also the youngest one of the three that I want to talk about today. Her name is Kelsey Juliana, and her and 21 other people sued the United States government in 2015 for violating their constitutional rights to life and liberty because a national energy policy was causing climate change. Unfortunately, in January 2020, their case was dismissed. But it's clear, as you can read from her quote there, she has not given up, and she is going to continue that fight. All of the people that I've talked about so far here have a love for the environment and people because they have basically an environmental view. What is your view? Is your view more like the one on the left or the one on the right? On the left, we see the humans at the top. At the right, we see the humans sort of in the middle of things with all the other living organisms there. Well, if you look at the humans at the top, we would call that an anthropocentric view, basically from the human perspective. If you're looking at the one on the right, we would call that a biocentric view, because we've got humans there, but all we're doing is looking at the other living organisms in this case. Now, if we look at an ecocentric view, we would look at the whole environment, which would include not only living organisms, but the non-living things. And if we look at it from a deocentric view, we would be including God and looking at how God fits into our view. I remember having a very thoughtful discussion in conservation biology, and the students realized that our view is probably changing, and changing among all of these different types of views depending on circumstances and things. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we know what our view is. And while our view should not be limited, we may oftentimes focus our view. How can we change our view or possibly change the view of others? Well, I think there's basically three ways that we need to do it. First, we need to touch nature. Here we see some students at the Kodo Prairie. In the top left and top right, students are out at Pilcher Park measuring wildflowers. Bottom right, students are out in Hickory Creek collecting fish and invertebrates. And in the bottom left, we've got students out there collecting seed and removing invasive species out at Medewan. Now, if we can't get to that now, if you can't get to those places, at least you can do is go take a walk. Look at the trees starting to bud and leaf out here. Look at all the little spring wildflowers popping up. Look at the violets. There's also some other things we can do. We can use our head here, and we can look at some readings. Well, first of all, I already mentioned Sand County Almanac, which is just a great book. I think I've read it probably 5 or 6 times. Biophilia by Edward O. Wilson talks about how really there's this human connection with all the other species. There's the Everglades River of Grass by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Yeah, you probably heard that name before for that high school in Florida, but that high school was named after her. She actually was responsible for saving the Everglades. You could also read Rachel Carson's A Silent Spring, and of course, Pope Francis's Laudito Si. So, you don't want to read? How about watch a video? Okay, Green Fire is a fantastic video about Aldo Leopold and his land ethic and how it was developed. Making Waves, A Battle for the Great Lakes is a video that was produced and created by Brendan and Jessica Walsh, two University of St. Francis graduates. And they actually won an Emmy Award for that in 2017. Both of those can be a little hard to get, but yeah, I know you could get the Rachel Carson video because it's available online, and you can also watch it. Now, you can also interact online. You can interact online with Earth Day Live. It's 3 days here of talks and videos about all sorts of things Earth Day, and it would probably be one of the best virtual experiences we can get right now for Earth Day. Well, how can we modify our view or change someone else's view? Here we see Greta Thunberg, obviously another one of my environmental heroes here that I could have mentioned before. But she actually realized that you need to get active and you need to be active in these environmental views. And what I brought out before was feet and hands. Get out and touch nature. Basically use your head, read, watch videos, learn something new. Okay, use your heart now. Go out and volunteer, plant a tree, start a garden, donate some money. We can certainly do that online. And last but not least here, vote. And as Greta would say, do not be afraid. We can make a difference. And remember, we are on this little blue marble out in space. What is your view? Thank you and have a great day.